Have you been thinking about working in Germany as a software developer and don't know what to expect? What kind of salaries are there? What does the tech scene look like? What does the job market look like? And what to expect from your potential future German colleagues? Then watch this video. So I decided to break up this video into multiple sections, first being my background. Then we're gonna talk about the tech scene. Then we're gonna talk about the German working culture, so to say, and my tips on it, on how to behave in it. And lastly, we're gonna demystify some of the German cliches that can actually be true sometimes. So, starting with my background. I moved to Germany almost 3 years ago and I worked in 2 different companies since then. And currently I work as a front-end developer in an edtech company. Well, I recently changed my position into a lead front-end developer, but you get the idea. Before that, I lived and worked in Eastern Europe, precisely in Lithuania and Estonia. Estonia is actually a very technology-wise advanced country, so my experience might not fit you 100%, but you will still find a lot of similarities depending on the part of the world you're coming from. And to be honest, I love Germany. I love German culture. I have things to do here. I have friends, and I have friends to do things with. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like things like football and skating, like cool things. One thing, unfortunately, I really have to point out though is the language. Yes, I moved to Berlin. It's super multicultural. You basically hear 5 to 10 different languages when you walk on down the street, and there are a lot of foreigners just like me who are new to Berlin. Some of them have been 20 years and still don't speak any German, so you can definitely live without German here. But speaking German will open a whole new world for you, not only career-wise, but also in your social life, because there are a lot of Germans who are quite shy to speak English, and if you speak German to them, you basically can make friends you never thought about even making. It will also make your life easier whenever you go to a doctor, whenever you visit the government offices, and so on. Speaking about the tech scene, on the other hand, it's still not very saturated and well balanced. Well balanced for developers, so to say. There are a lot of companies, a lot of startups that are looking for developers, and there are simply not enough developers. In my experience as a front-end developer, the lowest salary boundary for an average front-end developer you can expect is around 45k, which is still slightly higher than the average salary, meaning you can live very well with that money. The highest salary, on the other hand, is around 120,000 euros, which is a lot of money. Well, an average front-end developer will not get that money, nor an average back-end developer, nor an average data scientist. But if you're an engineering manager someday, you can expect to get this much money. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're a developer, basically don't worry about your financial life, because you're gonna have enough money, even if you're single, even if you have kids, to live off that money. Plus, another advantage that I have is that I live in Berlin, which is the capital of Germany, and it's still very affordable compared to other metropolitan cities of Europe, such as London or Paris and Amsterdam. But you can definitely say that Berlin is basically the German Silicon Valley. All the FANG companies have branches here, all the major Silicon Valley companies have branches here, you name it. GitHub, GitLab, Mozilla, Amazon. Well, of course, the engineering teams are not as big as in the Silicon Valley, but they still exist. Also, a lot of startups, as I mentioned before, a lot of incubators, a lot of angel investors. Speaking of the work times, Germany is one of the countries with the best work-life balance. So the typical work time you can expect is basically 8 hours with a 1 hour pause in between. So let's say you moved here, you found a job, you have a good salary and everything is cool. But what to expect from your future colleagues? So the working culture is primarily similar to other Northern European countries, like Scandinavian countries or Netherlands. But of course there are some subtle distinctions which I'm gonna cover most likely in my future videos. So make sure you subscribe. If your company is international, your ratio of locals, so meaning Germans, and internationals is gonna be like 80 to 20, maybe 70 to 30. So most of your colleagues will be locals, and you obviously have to know how to get along with them. So my biggest tip is just be friendly and respectful, like to everyone else. I'm not sure if you heard this, but there's a saying that it's really hard to make friends in Germany, which is true. But as soon as you make friends, these friends become friends for life. You can rely on them and they will always support you. So it's, let's say, the word friend just carries a whole different meaning in Germany compared to some other countries. So usually it's gonna take just a bit more time, a bit more experiences with that person to be able to call that person your friend, and for that person to call you a friend. There's another subtle difference. I'm sure most of you have heard the cliche that Germans are direct. So the thing is, you also probably gonna have to be direct here. You know, just getting straight to the point, not beating around the bush, and not diverging too much, so to say. Another part of that is the negative feedback, something that usually scares foreigners. As I said, Germans are pretty direct, especially with the negative feedback. So don't be surprised if you're presenting something and during the presentations someone jumps into your speech, interrupts you and starts criticizing you or asks relevant questions. So the criticism is still constructive. They have a point, but they're still challenging you, and this should not frustrate you. This is just how it is, and you just need to accept it and play along. If somebody gives you a negative feedback, it doesn't mean that, in most cases, it doesn't mean that the person disrespects you. It means that the person wants the best for the company and for you, so that you can improve yourself at this moment of time and maybe avoid going into the wrong direction. I'm now just referring to a presentation. Just imagine giving a presentation and you're explaining something in a different way that you're not supposed to. Somebody is gonna probably interrupt you. And basically how to behave in those situations, or how to behave in general in the German working environment. I gotta say, just be yourself, be authentic, and don't be too over the top, just like me in this video. No, I'm just kidding. Just be yourself. And as I said before, communicate openly and be direct. Don't expect the other person to understand your yes or no answer while you cover them up with long sentences. Just be precise and don't beat around the bush again. So for example, if you're tired and your boss asks you to stay a bit longer after 6, but you still need to go home, you should not say, hey, I will stay, but my wife is waiting for me at home. So that's not a good answer, because the person will understand that you're staying. Your wife is fine, she can wait. But instead you need to say, sorry, I cannot. You get what I mean, right? And last but not least, be on time. Yes, this will lead us to the cliches section, but I'm just want to mention that it's a very important thing. Although, surprisingly, a lot of friends of mine are still not on time, not only internationals, but also locals. Sometimes they're pretty late, including me, but of course it depends on the situation. So some cliches maybe. Yes, being on time, punctuality, 100%. Drinking beer, again, yes. There's a word in German called Feierabend, which doesn't have a direct translation into English, but it basically means the time after you finish your work. So some people go home for Feierabend and have a dinner. Some people go for a walk. Some people meet their friends for Feierabend during the Feierabend. But there's also word beer and Feierabend, and there's a new word that comes to life as soon as you merge Feierabend and beer, which is Feierabendbier. This is probably something you're gonna have pretty often with your colleagues and friends after you finish your work. So that's also a really good plus. And yes, beer is pretty much super cheap and everywhere here. Lederhose. I have never seen anyone wearing them to work, but if you have, please let me know in the comments below. I'm just curious what you guys have seen or have heard about. So, summary, you're gonna have a good time in Germany, especially if you speak German, and learn how to be more authentic and be yourself and try to smile sometimes. You know, people here just don't smile that often. Of course, depending on the country you're coming from. If you're coming from Mexico, you will probably think that people never smile here and are angry all the time, but trust me, it's not. If you give them a smile, they will most likely give you one back. And with that said, thank you for watching. If you like the content, please give me a like and stay tuned for the future videos. Goodbye.